Now, it's not around the world, I guess. This is a specific state's holiday where I guess
Independence Day.
our independence, how many years ago was established on July the 4th?
249 years.
How many?
249.
So we're pushing 250. We got a big year next year.
250 next year, right.
So you have found Through a Therapist's Eyes on YouTube live as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, as they say. I am Chris, your host, and we have John Nelson Pope with us hanging out. How are you, sir?
I'm doing outstanding. Thank you.
And we do not have Victoria this week. She is, I don't know, man, summer schedules are crazy. But we have officially the fill-in person we're loving to have, Miss Carrie Hill. She was on the show before. I didn't look up when it was, actually. Neil, you might need to save me and tell me when she was on. Or Carrie, do you remember how long ago that was?
Oh, it was a while. A couple months
Excuse
ago,
me.
probably. Yeah,
A couple of John sneezes ago. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
a
sorry.
couple
Excuse
months.
me.
So she is going to hang out with us,
It
and
was a
we're
couple
really
of months
glad
ago,
that
I think. It
you're
was
joining
still
us, Carrie.
cold. Yeah.
What's that, John?
It was still cold. So it's a few months ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not too long ago, but she had an awesome show on prescribing, and we chatted around, and she's going to join us from time to time, I
I
think.
geek I geeked out on it.
Carrie, where do they find you? How do they find you? I want to make sure off the front end that they can get Gastonia's best medication prescriber. Where do they find you at?
So you can find me at Road Trip to Recovery is the name of my company, and you can find me either by email or by website. My website's www.roadtriptorecovery.com, and my email is carriehillmp@roadtriptorecovery.com. And the two is a two, number two.
I won't try to do a phone number this time. I was flopping that up and kind of amazed that it's all technical now with you, right?
Yes, it's all. Well, I do text, so that's okay too. No calls. No.
So this is where you get personal insights from your panel of therapists and prescribers in your car or personal time at home, knowing it's not delivery of therapy services in any way. The three questions, we have an interesting show that we're going to be leaning on the academic version of John Pope today. Brother, you got to bring it today, man. You got to bring it. Okay.
I know, and yeah, you got me. But I'm looking at the show notes here, and I'm thinking, hey, you did a pretty good job of it.
I mean, I think so, right? But
Yeah.
you're the guy that knows everything about Stoicism because Carrie and I are kind of in the blind. I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
A little
Okay.
bit
Well,
in the
I'm
blind.
trying to,
But
you know,
this is Stoicism, Virtues and Potential Dangers, episode 318. The questions I want you to think about as you're working through it with us today. What Stoic virtue, courage, temperance, wisdom, justice do you most want to cultivate and why? And then have you ever used Stoic techniques? Maybe you don't even know what they are. Examples would be negative visualization, acceptance, to cope, and how did it impact you? And then thirdly, do you ever worry that suppressing emotions or avoiding action could backfire? That's actually kind of what my focus is going to be a little bit today.
yeah.
But we ask you to subscribe, click the bells, get the notifications, tell a friend. Really, it helps us get found. We try to do content that helps you to blow up stereotypes and stigmas about mental health. And
Five stars.
John gets upset. Go ahead, tell him, John.
You gotta give us 5 stars, and you find us on your podcast. And if you're doing Apple or Google or whatever, you or Spotify, give us 5 stars, and because that helps us rise like cream to the top.
We want to be cream, John. We
That's
want to
right,
be cream.
creme de la
Contact
creme.
at throughatherapisteyes.com. Guys, this is the human emotional experience, which we do endeavor to figure out together. And we're going to start out with a little bit of a current event today. Carrie, how much you know about Sean P. Diddy Combs? Do you know what's going on with this fella?
I know we got in trouble.
Big
Yeah.
trouble.
That's about it. I don't know really. I don't really keep up with like what's happening, but I know that I guess he's on trial, maybe. And
Baby oil,
Yeah,
baby
yeah,
oil,
big time. What's that, John? What do you know about it?
baby oil. That's
Baby.
everybody's. When he got off on some of the counts, everybody was waving their baby oil
Oh,
out
God.
there in the outside the courthouse.
Is that, is
Yeah,
that's what they were
because
literally
evidently
doing?
that's what they used a lot into their meetups, and
Okay, so those of you who don't know what happened, this is a pretty big court case that's been going on. and it's with P Diddy Combs, who was a famous rap artist, and he would have these crazy parties, Carrie. So he would have what he called them as freakouts because they were highly sexualized activity, just
Anything
horrific
goes.
details
Yeah.
shared in the trials, inappropriate times 10 to the nth degree. And so he copped charges for actually racketeering charges. And then he caught charges for transporting beyond state lines to
Which is a
prostitution.
federal
Two
offense.
charges of that, which is a
Yeah.
federal offense. And then what were the other two charges? Just, I guess, sex offending.
Sex offending, right? But it
Oh no,
somehow they
sex
made it
trafficking.
into
They,
trafficking. Yeah.
they were full blown sex
Uh-huh.
trafficking charges.
Right.
So it came down, Kerry, where the verdicts came. Everybody's been following this big deal, and I mean it's right up there with like Bill Cosby and Epstein and very powerful people doing this. And so the racketeering charges, he was found not guilty.
Hmm.
The sex trafficking charges, he was found, I think, not guilty as well. But then he was found guilty on the two transportation for prostitution.
That's right.
So he got off, and that's what happened. John, you know what's going on. What do you take from this insofar as the?
I don't know what's going on.
Well, I just told you. I thought you said you did.
Yeah. Okay. Well, to me, it's the idea that, and, I was thinking of Robert Blake uh, getting off
Mm.
from murdering his girlfriend, I believe, at one time.
Is that recent
Many
too? I think.
That's about 20 years ago, but
Oh well, then
yeah, but that's not recent. But in the sense that celebrity and fame does give you some sort of immunity. O.J. Simpson, going back 30 years,
sure.
uh, goes back there,
Domestic violence.
and there was jury nullification. My understanding is that in this case of Combs is that there were two people that were adamant that they were going to nail him, two jurors going to nail him for everything, and two jurors that just went against what was considered overwhelming evidence, and they just,
Mm-hmm.
they kind of nullified that.
Well, I think
So,
that's the thing, John, that's shocking. And guys, what I want to talk about just for a couple of minutes because we have a lot to get to with the Stoicism. But if you think about it, this case kind of to me seems to spin really one way or another on the provability and the issue of consensuality.
mhm.
That's what the big rug was, with this particular court case. And Carrie, I guess, really you as a woman, I'm sure realize all of the sexual dangers that are out there, with, uh, men and dating and, it's just, it's rough out there right now with all of the internet addiction. I mean, addiction, right? So, you know, how can we deal with the issue of consensuality in the courtroom with rape issues, domestic violence, and certainly sex trafficking and even racketeering? That consensuality issue, I feel like, is really tricky.
Yes, it definitely is, and that's why a lot of women won't say anything about when things happen. They
Yeah.
they won't come forward because they don't feel like anybody's going to believe them, and and plus it's a horrifying and traumatic experience anyway. And then to have people, you know, because of social media and the way things play out, people attack people. And so now it's so different with social media, and because everybody's going to come at you with their opinion because everybody's got
Mhm.
one.
I was thinking too. Thank you. I was thinking too that there was a lot of recorded images of P Diddy attacking his girlfriend. Then I think her name was Ventura, and that was in an elevator. That was very violent,
Well
and
viewed event on the in the
yeah,
hotel. Yeah,
and
very ugly.
despite that evidence, he's uh, uh, people have kind of cut him a break on this.
It would appear, I don't know if he's been cut a break, or what really makes me nervous is, yeah, Carrie, we have way underreporting on this issue.
Hmm.
We have hard provability because you have to prove that this was not consensual. And so it's just, the torturous realities of sex trafficking go unabated. And I'll go one step further. We do the Me Too movement, as women, uh, struggling with this issue of abuse and whatnot. And I'm thinking that men is already even in a way lesser ability to talk about this, report this, deal with this. So when you look at the primary issue of consensuality being here, like, how do men deal with this when they're a victim of their own, abuse? And I look at the He Too movement.
Hmm.
So I don't really have an answer, but it's just,
Well,
how do you prove consent?
I mean, this wasn't just with females. It's also males were involved with the abuse, being
Yeah, but
abused.
they were only charged with the two women. But you're
Uh-huh.
right, males were
Hmm.
abused in this ring also. But I guess that's what I'm saying. That's the challenge that we have as a mental health field, guys, right? How
Yeah.
do we help people understand, the provability and the issue of consensuality, so that we can get people helped? I don't really have an answer, but I think that's the main confliction here. Do you either have
I
any
agree.
thoughts about that, either of the two of you?
No, I just think that I think we just have to keep uh, vigilant and be able to when we see the potential for abuse, is to be able to report it and to be able to uh, deal with it in terms of therapy. And certainly we're mandatory reporters if we have knowledge of abuse and
All
as
good and
therapists.
very fair points.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that what just comes to my mind is helping people recognize the importance of dealing with this issue.
Hmm.
Like, I don't
Yeah.
think people really have permission to even talk about it,
Yeah.
John, let
I agree.
alone, deal with it in such a dramatic way as the court system is.
Being in academia for a while, there was I would say a silencing of people to be able to make their opinions, or silencing of dialogue. And of course, with the Me Too movement, you want to be able to any type of unwarranted sexual advance or anything of that sort is that you want to deal with it. You want to, but to not even be able to talk about it. I think that because there was so much um, otherism, I guess, if that men sometimes felt like they couldn't um, talk about it and try to
Right.
get some sort of an idea. Well, am I being somebody that is uh, imposing myself onto somebody else without even knowing, if I'm doing this or not, and because you're afraid you're going to get in trouble if if you try to inquire about it.
Yeah, it's just, it seems so murky, so blurred
Mhm.
lines, so limited in scope of understanding. The thing that occurred to me is, understanding what is pornography. And there's this phrase, right, where, well, you know it when you see it, but
Yeah.
it's really hard to really define it.
Hence last week. Yeah.
Right, hence last week. Right. So I think that there's some challenges that we're coming in to try to get figured out. We need help, guys. The issue is we need help in the court system to either, I heard some talk about, lessen the burden
Mhm.
of proof or something, because these are egregious situations, horrifying realities in sex trafficking, and it
Yeah.
is way more prevalent than you would ever imagine the facts of the matter to
Uh-huh.
be. And so
Yeah.
we have got to get better as a society with this particular issue. I'm
Mhm.
just kind of sounding a little bit of
Yeah.
an alarm. So
I
let's move
had
on
had
to
a
our show
client.
topic, but unless
Yeah.
you have conclusions, John,
No, I
yeah.
had a client that he had to go through an education process. He realized that he was actually engaging as a John in sex trafficking because he,
Absolutely.
yeah, because he had a propensity. This was in Houston, Texas, a propensity for a preference for Asian women, and finds out that the women that he had been frequently and visiting were Thai, and they were being sexually exploited
Yeah.
and trafficked
Kerry,
into.
I'm just curious, real quick, and then we'll get off of this. But you work with addiction as well as mental health. I understand, but have you seen increased rates of this? I mean, what do you see in your circles about just the addiction level behavior with sexual addictions?
Not as much. I mean, I know that it's definitely, s- prominent, um, but I haven't seen that as much in my practice.
Well, just your own practice, maybe so, but the proliferation I'm getting at with the internet has been uh, just unfathomable in the last 10, 15 years
Right. And some
on
people,
these issues.
with addiction, a lot of people don't realize what is that, when they're crossing that line.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
some people
So
don't.
I'm thinking too is that I have a couple of clients that are involved with Pornhub, uh, and there is a potential for a lot of exploitation and sex trafficking that can be found on those heights, and in a sense, and we're not we have a real strong emphasis on I'm free to do what I want, and our hyper individualism, but we don't take our responsibility as a society that say maybe we need to step down from these areas where people are being exploited. I think we do. I think, and where people would have some sort of what is good for the society is
Gotcha.
not to have as much of this
And I think
freedom.
that's my landing, John, is we need some legal intervention with legal minds to rewrite codes so that this can be
Uh-huh.
litigated. Because right
Right.
now, golly, this case shouldn't have been
Right.
ending in an acquittal.
Yeah.
I'll
You
go
know,
out on a limb and
so
say that. But
you're not
we've
a
got to
fan
get
of the
moving
baby
on.
oil. Is that what I'm
Yeah.
hearing? Yeah.
Uh, but we got to get to moving on. So let's look at our questions. What stoic virtue? So we have a little bit of a list here, Carrie. Courage, temperance, wisdom, justice. What do you most cultivate and why? John, do you know much about the well, all right, let me back up. Let me set this up a little bit. I thought this would be a cool episode because I really don't know a lot about stoicism and I like learning.
Uh-huh.
I've always been telling myself for many years now that I need to pick up a little bit on what this whole thing is. So today's the day, Carrie, for you and I
It's
guess.
Citium, it's
because
Zeno,
be-
it's
because
yeah.
what I have found is I have clients that get real interested in the Stoic philosophy,
Uh-huh.
the Stoic persona. And I have theories about that. And I'm really going to be curious, John, what you think about my thoughts about it. But Carrie and I are a little bit in the blind. John, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high level, one being low level, I'm probably at about a 2 or 3 on this one. I'm
You're
pretty
higher
low.
than that. I from
Where
the
would you say you are?
maybe a four
Okay, yeah,
or five,
okay.
but I got some ideas, and I
Well, I
hope that
think you're about to blow us out with a
okay.
whole lot more than
Well,
four.
one is it started back in the like with Zeno with a Zeno of Citrium, Citium, and which is he was Greek. It was in off of Cyprus, and he was there, and he was a merchant, and he
Okay,
was very successful as a merchant, and he had all his goods on his ship, and then there was a storm, and the storm sank, and he survived the shipwreck, and
okay.
he got really depressed, and he said there, I'm ruined, my life is over and all of that,
And this is
and
the father of Stoicism, basically?
he's the father of Stoicism,
Okay,
and he turned it around, and he did this with the four virtues, that you see here that you spoke about. What was it? Courage, temperance, wisdom, and justice.
Yeah.
He also had a school that of followers that learned from him, and there were several philosophers, one of which ended up being a great Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius, in the late second century. But the person that Aurelius learned from was Epictetus, I believe is how you spell his name. And he was mid first century, all the way into the beginning of the second century. And he was a slave, and he lived in Turkey. And yet he was able to influence emperors with his philosophy, because slavery back in those days was different than the way we perceive it. Even
Okay.
though and so he had people following him in his school. Now the thing is that with Stoicism is that I think sometimes people mistaken it, and I think this is where the negative aspect is it. And I don't want to jump ahead too much, but everybody thinks it's like Mr. Spock, live long and prosper.
Live
Okay.
long and
Okay.
prosper.
Or
Can you do it, Carrie?
suppressing your
Carrie
emotions.
can't
But
do it.
it's not suppressing your emotions. It's, however, having courage.
Say that
And
again, because that is a
yeah,
huge
it's
element right there.
not suppressing your emotions as much as, despite your fears, is going ahead and doing it. And it's having courage is doing something in the face of danger, and going ahead and committing to it. And so there's an aspect that's very appealing to the modern mind, I think.
What I read, I
Yeah,
liked. I'll
yeah,
tell you
yeah,
that.
yeah.
You
I did
know,
too. And I think of I think Theodore Roosevelt talked about the man in the arena. There's that aspect. Or Rudyard Kipling with the "If," his poem "If." When others are losing their heads, you keep yours. You do this. There's
and that's all
another
part of the Stoic philosophy.
Stoic philosophy.
Carrie,
There's
I got to
Stoic.
ask Carrie a question
Okay.
because you could go on with this, I think, and we're going to
Yeah,
need you.
I evidently
Carrie,
know more
does
than I
that
thought
at
I did.
all sound like a level 4 knowledge on a 1 to 10 scale to you?
Uh-huh.
Or
Oh, it's pretty high up there.
Yeah.
I think we need to replace John's number. We're how far up are you going? I think I'm going to like 7.5 to 8.
To eight, yeah.
Yeah,
Eight's
8, yeah, more like 8.
yeah.
John John is one of the most humble people that I think I know. Salt of the earth kind of guy. Brother, that's not a 4,
All
okay? That
right.
is not
All
a
right.
4.
Yeah. Well, the thank you. I think this it is humbling to me. I think about Marcus Aurelius in his meditations. That's another aspect of Stoicism, is that even from the very earliest ages, this predates Christianity. From the very earliest dates, uh, talking about write it down, be literate, and so journaling was very important in the idea of Stoicism, because it's a discipline that teaches you how to think critically and cogently.
Interesting.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so
here's the thing. I think that this resonates to people for the wrong reasons, John.
uh,
You're totally on point, I feel like, with that. And that's kind of why I've had, usually when stoicism comes up in my practice, it's somebody that picks up on these things and really gets drawn into what I think is not what you're talking about.
right.
And basically it's folks that want to withdraw, shut down, avoid emotions, internalize things and not be really engaged, with resolving and dealing with the uncomfortableness of emotions, right?
Hmm.
Basically they want to just shut things down, and so they find some of what stoicism they think
Hmm.
says, but it's not is not really accurate as to what the whole philosophy is.
Mhm.
Um, Carrie, have you ever heard people talking about this at all? Like, and people that you've come across practicing? Just curious.
Nope, just in school.
Yeah.
Just in school? Gotcha. Okay.
That was a
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
time ago too, by the way.
Well, there's a great Billy Joel song called Pressure. And
That is a good one. He always
yeah,
comes up with songs, Carrie.
but
That's good.
the thing with pressure is that you do have you end up with scars on your face. You do end up with feeling the pressure, but it's the great nevertheless. And there's an appeal with Stoicism with Christianity, even though Marcus Aurelius, uh, the emperor in the late uh, second century, great emperor. You've heard him on Gladiator, the movie.
Just watched it not too long ago, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he really was a wise person, and he did that, but he did persecute Christians a bit. But anyway, having said that, um, the the thing is that with Stoicism, people can, I think, prevent prevent the need eventually. In other words, they can preserve their mental health, its well-being. The,
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Like, let look at, so as we go through and Carrie and I kind of pick up a little bit more on and learn what it is. Like, these things seem like 100% what we do, Carrie. Working with people to develop internal resiliency, looking at managing, the thought processes. I even saw in my journey, looking at learning a little bit about Stoicism, the philosophy, is being like cognitive reframing. Like, it's literally a part of. John likes that. He's clapping. If you're
yeah,
watching this on YouTube, you would see, right? Like, which we're on YouTube. Everybody listening on the podcast realize that we are on YouTube and we do YouTube lives on Thursdays, by the way. But anyway, like, the definition of stoic is a person who can endure pain or hardship without showing their feelings or complaining. That's not what stoicism, the philosophy,
uh-uh,
is. Two
no.
totally different realities. John, why are you clapping?
Well, I'm clapping because it's very similar, I think, to challenging the negative cognitions and distorted cognitions. And so, some of the things that you're going to talk about a little bit later, the techniques that Stoicism uses, is also REBT, rational emotive behavioral therapy.
Now
And
that's something that we know, Carrie, right?
Ellis, Albert Ellis, he was influenced by Stoicism when he came up with his theories.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
That's not shocking then.
yeah,
Yeah.
so so you challenge the negative thinking. You accept that there is something negative happening to you, but you need to make it so that it doesn't go where you're self-blaming and false blame and false guilt, that sort of thing.
So this philosophy seems to really emphasize control, what we
Mhm.
can control, and I feel like that's why people get drawn to it. That I've kind of found over the years, and not a lot. I'm talking about a kind of a handful of people, but I've always been curious about this because it seems like through my practice every now and again I get people that are drawn towards this. And I think that's what the draw is. Like, I want to be able to be in control and not show my emotions.
Mhm.
I want to be able to control my actions and judgments and be more grounded in the moment. And that's a lot of what stoicism is, but I think
Mhm.
there's a whole lot more as you're beginning to kind of see some of the
Yeah,
layers on how it really helps to get control of your life rather than just, hide from your life basically,
right. Yeah,
which is the big drawback,
yeah.
right?
I was thinking that stoicism, it had causes you, instead of withdrawing, and it says, I think it means engaging in life instead
Right.
of not
Totally
having.
different.
Yeah, it's having, uh, having the courage. Rollo May is another person that was an existentialist that was very influenced by the Stoics. And I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was an
No, because you
existentialist.
just went to an 8.5, brother.
Okay, all right. So,
4. What is he talking about, Gary?
so anyway, and he talked about this a lot. The
Yeah.
idea that you have the courage to be, to create. There's that sense of, and so there's a connection with existentialism too, and which is also a philosophy. So
Okay, yeah. I mean, it advocates for virtue and courage and temperance, justice, wisdom, guiding the ethical decisions and purpose that you have in life. I love the way
what does
that you
that
just
sound like?
reframed
That
it,
sounds like a
John.
Reinhold Niebuhr prayer, doesn't it? Or the AA prayer.
Well, AA, I can speak. I think we
Okay.
understand that, but Ribo, what?
Reinhold Niebuhr is
Yeah, I
the
don't know
one
what.
that wrote the AA prayer, the
No
Serenity
idea.
prayer.
You're gonna totally lose me, brother. What is it? How is it? How is it related to AA?
Well, it's
Serenity Prayer, you mean?
yeah, do it, and I'll comment on it.
Well, yeah, the Serenity Prayer. I mean, that's a fundamental. Well, Carrie, why don't you tell us about that? That's a recovery speak.
God grant me the
Oh goodness, y'all want me to use my memory?
Oh yeah.
yeah. See, I don't do well that way.
Nah, I wish I could spout it out, but definitely, I know it. But of course,
No, it's God grant me the serenity. Yeah,
The courage to change the things I can, the serenity to accept the things that cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference between the two.
all the points of Stoicism,
Those are all Stoic points.
Stoic points.
yeah,
Yeah,
everything that.
except justice.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, and yeah,
And these would
Yeah.
be lovely
and the
principles to
wisdom
live
to
by
know
if
the
everybody would
difference.
live by them. You
What's
know,
that, Carrie?
it'd be lovely principles to live by if everybody would live by them.
Yeah,
Well, and I think that's what people are drawn to this, honestly, when they begin getting a little bit of information about it. They get kind of pulled in because, yeah, it really is a whole lot more about how we relate as a culture and control what we can control. And yeah, wouldn't it be great if we all had
yeah,
elements of that? I cite the Serenity Prayer all the time.
yeah.
Yeah, courage, temperance, wisdom, justice, key practices. Um, I think that there's a lot that we can use in our therapy realm and probably do. But Carrie, I don't know if you and I realize that we do a lot of these practices. Like you use meditation when you're working with people a little bit, right?
Mhm. Oh yeah, definitely.
Right. We use reframing all the time with cognitive reframing,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
We're constantly talking about how can yeah, you talk about medications, but one of the things I love about Carrie's work is you're much more into, like, you'll even do therapy with people, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
developing internal emotion management. I mean, that's Stoicism is, what did you say, John? How did you refer to it? Like living life instead of avoiding life.
Right, living life, embracing it to the fullness, having the courage to jump into it, but also doing it with prudence, and that is being able to use it with perception, with judgment, and equanimity. The
Anonymity.
yeah, yeah, being able to know when to it means to be empathetic to. Oh, one of them said, one, I think it might have been Zeno with a Z, or it might have been Epictetus who said, that's why we have two ears to listen and one mouth to speak.
Oh, that's where that
So
comes from.
that's where that comes from.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where, and I think that's very important. I'm speaking too much, so I need to.
You're
The
definitely not speaking too much.
therapist
He
need.
said that you were going to know the most about this.
Yeah. Uh,
I warned us.
yeah. Um, I got. What is virtue, by the way? Do we have a definition of virtue?
Well, we have computers, Carrie. Why don't you take a shot at it while I look it up?
Virtue is being truthful and honest.
Yeah, or living consistently, authentic, right? That's virtuous.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Okay. Definition is
consistently.
behavior showing high moral standards or in traditional Christian theology, the seventh highest order of the ninefold celestial hierarchy. That's a big
Okay.
deal.
Yeah, that's
Virtue.
Aristotelian. That's from Aristotle. That's and that's from Saint Thomas Aquinas. You get those seven virtues. But 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 I guess my question would be, or the thing of virtue is a practice. It's not just a static state. It's an active practice of living. And so you live a virtuous life is it's not one that it's not making mistakes. It's not you do make mistakes, you do falter, but it is moving on, learning from it, moving on, and to ascribe to something, making yourself better than you were.
Why do you think that? I guess it's predated. I'm just listening a little bit to you, John, and I'm kind of like this is such the wrong name. It feels like for a philosophy,
Mhm.
you know, like you know what I'm saying, Carrie?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Like it
definitely.
feels
But
weird, right? Like there's
it sounds like, like I was telling you in the beginning, it sounds like something where you just kind of don't like move, like you kind of stand still. That like that word just kind of that makes me.
stoic.
I
yeah,
don't think of like when it first thing that comes to mind is not like learning or moving, forward with life. Is more like standing still. That's almost what the word
yeah,
It
means.
really is. It seems so different than what I'm learning about the philosophies are, and we're going to talk a little bit about the specific virtues and some of the practices. But yeah, I really think that people use this tendencies to be very maladaptive, to avoid life, to not grow, to not move, to stay stuck, to hide emotions. That's what I think of with stoic. But stoicism, the philosophy, very different. John, I'm really loving listening to you about it because
uh-huh,
I mean, I get clients that are drawn to this that
uh-huh.
just want to avoid people, avoid the world. That's
Yeah,
what gets drawn to this.
yeah. Well, then you choose the wrong philosophy because one, you're not static, and two, you're dynamically and actively engaging the world with Stoicism, and you're proactive. And part of that is also to, with some of the techniques that they use, and which is sort of you said it was negative. What was it? Um,
Well, we'll
the
get there. I guess
okay.
what are those things? Yeah. Well, okay. The key
Uh,
practices we can go
uh,
there. Premeditative malorium. I guess that's
Yeah,
basically
that means bad or the bad things. And memento mori, which remember your death, that's Latin. And
okay.
you'll see that on some guys who have it on their arms tattooed and they don't know what the hell they're talking about. You know,
Really?
yeah, that's yeah. It's it's that you ponder your finiteness. You're not going to live forever, and you have to make the most of living in the here and now. So you remember your death, and so there's that sense of being able to. You don't fixate on it. Instead, you acknowledge that one day you are going to die. You
You're aware of the
embrace it.
journey.
Yeah. And so your mortality, you embrace your mortality. And that also means make the most of what you have and to uh, that you're able to live life to the fullest.
So it's not about, negativity or, hopelessness or
Mm-mm.
stuckness in the moment or recognizing I'm going to die so it doesn't matter. I mean, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's what do you do while you're here?
Right,
How do you move through it? Yeah,
right.
like back to the things. I mean, these are visualizing skills,
Mm-hmm.
visualization. And Carrie, I mean, we have so much overlap with what we do with guided imagery and de-escalating techniques and even full-blown hypnosis and stuff. Do you use much of that in your practice, like with panicked people and that type of thing?
Not hypnosis that
No,
but
well, yeah, the other stuff, but
the other stuff, yeah, but not, yeah, just helping them through high anxiety situations or things that trigger them while we're in session. And visualization's a big one. I love
Uh-huh.
that, the guided imagery, um, and also the senses. Another one of my favorite ones is what do you see, what do you hear, what do you feel, what can
I
you
see.
touch,
Yeah.
and
Right.
to kind of
Yeah,
go.
that has to do with Stoicism, and I never knew that.
Mm.
Uh, Key practice is journaling. I mean, there's overlap with that. I mean, do we ever suggest for people to be, in touch with writing activities and how they can make sense out of their thoughts by reading what we journal? Um, John, you asked about what the key practices are. Reframing. This is where I saw the
Uh-huh.
reframing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's cognitive
That's
behavioral therapy,
that's right.
guys.
That's Beck and Ellis.
Beck
Yeah.
and Ellis, right? Um, the Where am I at? The external and internal locus of control.
Oh,
You know,
is that
Te-
Glasser?
yes.
Yeah.
Carrie, tell us about internal and external locus of control, because I think people get really confused about that.
Yes, that's true. Oh goodness, pulling out like trying to remember all these things that you
Oh, you're doing
That's
fine.
you're doing fine. You're doing fine.
this has been a long time since I've talked about this stuff, because it's just these things that we do and like don't really put words to it, I guess you'd say.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, just and having internal control versus external, and how you show those things through. So, but and
Yeah.
I get quite a few people with that'll come to me with normal behaviors of like, especially like related to grief. I've had a lot of that lately. People have
Mm.
been losing people and things like that, and they'll come to me for medication, and I'm like, I don't think that's, I don't recommend that that's an appropriate. You need to feel those emotions. We don't need to numb those, you know.
Feelings.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
feelings.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
John.
Uh-huh.
He goes off in song.
Yeah.
Yes, Carrie, absolutely on point. And by the way, I love a prescriber that is going to work with you and not tell you, hey, take these medications and just dope out
Uh-huh.
so that you're not going to deal with anything. Did you hear that, y'all? Like
That's
I love
important.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And you're right on point with the locus of
Yeah.
control being
So
internal or
stay with
external.
it.
That's stoicism. And
Yeah.
I never knew that. But we work with that all the time. This is the serenity prayer again, right? What, John?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that there are, I think, a lot of therapists that are basically are Stoics that didn't know it, that don't know it.
Absolutely. That's what I'm learning.
Yeah. And
That's the point I'm telling Carrie and I. I mean, we do these things all the time,
mhm.
and isn't that true though? Usually, when people have like a name of a philosophy or whatever, and this has been around for a long time. When did you say he did his little gladiator thing, John?
Mhm.
This was back in Roman times.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
probably predates a lot of stuff, right? So we take pieces that
Uh-huh.
fit, add it with something else, and continue to develop newer things that
Uh-huh.
that are very effective. And
Right.
so this goes way back to some origins of, as you said, cognitive behavioral therapy, REBT. Um, you know,
You could say
Glasser with this stuff.
DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, any type of
DBT, right? There's
yeah.
all these philosophies that combine together. So,
Uh-huh.
as a if you're interested in Stoicism and you're learning a little bit about it with us, what I want to encourage you to be careful about is to not fall into a trap of everything being answered by one thing. That's just you know, generally speaking, that's generally not going to be the case. So, but you can pull things from this in an active way to really augment what it is that you're
Mhm.
learning about in your life today, and some of the theories, some of the philosophies, some of the components, some of the skill sets are all elements in a lot of whatever choices a therapist might make about how we're going to do therapy. So let's look at real quick a little bit of these the virtues and the practices, right? Taking courage first, is that so? Am I to believe that these are the core pieces of Stoicism, John? That are the elements that people base on the whole
Yeah.
philosophy, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. So
His core beliefs.
so courage is a big component that doesn't have a lot of elements of avoiding emotion. it doesn't have a lot of elements of shutting down the way that you feel, right?
Right.
As a matter of fact, it has much more to do with one of the big four that I did in my book, coming out to understand, what do you do to manage yourself? You value yourself, you stop and reflect on emotions, you have focus points. And the fourth one is action points, which is exactly what you need: courage in order to do things. So,
Hmm.
Stoicism, am I saying it correctly, John, allows us to have courage to do
Yes.
more than what we would have done otherwise.
Right. Right. It kind of gives you the, maybe it's almost like the catalyst to, or the mitochondria, which are the little powerhouses of our cells. It's the Stoicism is sort of like the life philosophy, the energy, the energizing aspect to it. Um, Maybe that would be a way of doing that. It's Stoicism is helping you get the courage to be able to act and to not not look back, but to do it boldly. And
In military and special forces, we call it front,
right,
front. Dang, I just messed it up. Front, face, centered. I
uh-huh.
screwed it up, Gary.
Front page, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What does it save me, John?
No, no, that's fine. I was a chaplain, so I don't.
You, you did do the special forces.
I ran around with the seals a little bit, but they
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 didn't wait
were
up.
animals, so
They didn't wait
not
up
in a
for you.
bad way. Huh? Yeah,
So temperance and moderation is another virtue, and to
all
me,
things in moderation,
right.
moderation, all things in moderation. Yeah.
Don't get too up with the ups. Don't get too down with the downs. Like these are kind of in my mind like standard things. I didn't know it was a part of Stoicism.
Mhm. Yeah.
But Carrie, I'm going to submit you and I work with people all the time where we're trying to help bipolar folks calm down, self regulate. Don't get too up with the great month that you've had in your marriage. Let's level this out. Don't get too down when things are rough, right? Like we talk about this all
Well,
the time.
that is precisely what Marcus Aurelius would have talked about in his meditations.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, and burnout too. That's another
Yeah.
thing. Um,
Ah,
Yeah.
I actually just got something about that today. It was almost like so, you have to realize when you're getting to the point that things are, and sometimes that's hard to do. Like sometimes it's somebody else saying something to you because
Uh-huh.
you don't really realize that you're to that point. But somebody who's close to you might, and
Uh-huh.
so it's always good to kind of check in and make sure that you're taking time for yourself and not just all involved in work or all involved in somebody else, whether it be relationships or something. You need to make sure that you're also
Mhm.
focusing on you and yourself and your health and your mental health. So,
absolutely. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. I mean, burnout, you know, or we call it compassion fatigue from therapists, but
mhm.
when you're in a just a depleted state, you would think, oh, great, I want to be stoic and just be alone and isolate. Yeah, John's head starts going, no, no, it's
No,
not
no,
it,
no,
right? It's like
no.
you're addressing the burnout.
Yeah.
You're actively getting yourself out of burnout.
Burned out people are not stoic. Burned out people are people that are alienated from their inner selves. A stoic would say, "I'm in touch with who I am in my thought processes,
Oh, I love
and
that.
in my feelings, in my thoughts."
As the
And
kids say, I'm in my feels.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
Yep.
Moving next, I love the wisdom. Okay. Recognizing what's within our control and acting rationally. Have we ever heard a philosophy that operates, from the primary point of wisdom? How about DBT? You know anything about DBT with wise mind?
uh-huh. Wise mind. You're talking about DBT, right?
Right.
So, right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So in other
Another
words, what you can,
shared
but
principle.
if you have a wise mind, you step outside of yourself
Right.
and you can be objective. That's
Right.
not you're not detaching necessarily, but you are observing oneself. That gives you control to do that but it also recognizes that you cannot change an external. You can change the internal.
So again, internal versus external
Right.
locus of
How you
control.
respond to
The
things.
Dr. Carey got it.
Yeah.
What's that,
So
Gary?
How you respond to things.
yeah.
You can't control what's happening or around you to
Uh-huh.
a certain degree, but you can control
Uh-huh.
how you react
Yeah.
and respond to
One of the things when I was in the military, Chris, was we would have crisis. It seemed like there was a crisis all the
Right.
time,
Okay.
at least once a
Sure.
month, and we'd go to DEFCON 1, uh, like once. It seemed like every month, but it was probably once every 3 or 4 months when I was in the Philippines. And there were people that would just completely fall apart during a crisis,
Mm,
and that, it's okay, but you don't want somebody to, you know a young marine or a sailor to overreact and shoot you or something like that. But you would, I think, a person that would be living a stoic life would be able to know, maybe to think about how to react in a crisis, maybe not even envision a crisis, and yet not, uh, say dwell on it, but to be able to have it played out in your mind. And I'm kind of wondering, when we have problems, that maybe we could do that too. Is
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think to me, this is again, what can I be in control with internally, allowing my emotions to be present.
uh-huh,
And to me, this happens a lot with trauma.
uh-huh,
I just had a conversation. Well, my last appointment actually of the day, we were talking about the anxiety is the primary issue, and I'm learning that from a Stoic's perspective, you're going to take that anxiety and understand when it's active. That is wise
uh-huh.
mind. At least I'm much more familiar with DBT than Stoicism, but when you're using wisdom, go ahead, John.
No, no, no. I like it. I was just seeing
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, because I just figured you'd have more thunder with it than I will, but I'm
Uh-huh.
doing my best here. I'm doing my very
You're
level
doing
best.
fine.
The idea then with stoicism would be, you want to kind of be in a state of mind where you allow to feel what you're feeling, and realizing that you want to wrap your rational mind around what it is that's going on. That's not being stoic.
Uh-huh.
That's being rational and grounded and active with the way that you feel. Like
Uh-huh.
I said, it's totally named wrong,
Uh-huh.
because when you have something that's traumatic or you have anxiety that is a condition, it kind of just takes over, and you're literally not even in control of your own thoughts or your own body, because you're sweating or you're having sweaty palms, or I don't know, what are the
But
number of things that you
the
feel out of
wise
control
mind,
about.
though, would say, I've got sweaty palms, I have palpitations, I'm doing this, and that one is able to observe what's going on, and thus by observing it, change the situation and regain a centeredness.
Right. There's actions that we're doing,
Actions, yeah.
right?
Uh,
And again, all of this in my mind is kind of because I feel like clients that have been drawn to this are really drawn to the inappropriate things that we don't want to be drawn to, which is what the potential drawbacks and dangers of this, you know, I would submit, we can get led to. Um, so, and John, you reframed this so awesomely. I feel like, when you said this is about actively living rather than just avoiding. So the potential dangers that I feel like, suppression versus regulating, you know, stoicism is all about regulating your emotions rather than suppressing your emotions. Is that what I'm
right.
learning?
Yeah.
Yep.
See, one is, if you're suppressing it and repressing it, you're basically, denying
This is
that.
why I had arguably a bad impression of stoicism, because of the consistent observation that I made of who was interested in
Mhm,
learning more about this.
mhm.
for the reasons of suppressing. And I'm
Mhm.
finding we're in a healthy way regulating what you become aware of with
Mhm.
Stoicism. So misinterpreted Stoicism can be numb feelings or reducing empathy or
Mhm.
being emotionally distant or not really processing emotions. None of that is what
This
Stoicism
sounds like
supports.
some symptoms of PTSD.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Um, Go ahead.
no, I'm going to have a little. I'm excited about it. There's the fact there was a Donald Robertson. I think he's British. I'm not sure, um, but or Scottish. He wrote an article. It was Robertson and Codd. It's Stoic philosophy is cognitive behavioral therapy, and he explored the similarities of CBT with Stoicism, the philosophy of it. And he was very clear of saying, both of the authors, but Robertson was the primary author, that uh, that it is Stoicism is bigger and deeper than CBT. Um, and because Stoicism is a philosophy of life, and so it is a preventative
Okay.
to uh, for having, in a sense, that it helps prevent having those negative cognitions or thoughts that could lead you into serious mental illness or serious depression or anxiety. And so it actually helps. It's a preventative measure, and it's a way of so it's a worldview. And I think you could be in my mind, you could be a Stoic and be a Christian or be a Buddhist
Oh,
or
that they can
what.
combine together, huh?
Yeah, they can be used together
Okay.
in that sense, in a
Interesting.
very positive sense.
I wouldn't have thought it that way.
Yeah,
What we're not after is apathy or feeling socially detached or having an overemphasis on
yeah,
individualism, being flat or rigid. Like, again, these are impressions that I think of what people have and are drawn to it for those reasons. But contrary to that,
uh-huh,
we're working on focusing on acceptance,
yeah. There's,
leading. We're let me go a little further. We're looking at, you know, instead of being an individual, we're looking at, the whole collective and being in a togetherness,
uh-huh,
and again, being rigid or flat, that's not it. It's pursuing being rational, so you're not hindering yourself in a limited view based on just what you're struggling with. It opens you up. So I think there's a lot of misperceptions about, at least I had, Carrie.
yeah,
Does this sound like what
yeah.
you would have thought Stoicism is? Let me check in with you, what you're hearing, as far as what we may have thought together, you and I, before we looked at this.
Yeah, and well, this is a little that that like the dangers. That's a little bit more than like that. That's probably the opposite end because I kind of felt like it was more of a standing still type thing. But those things are way more negative, so we don't want to go
Uh-huh,
down that route with the
uh-huh.
But that's what I think people are drawn to initially, misunderstanding what they're going to learn about.
Yeah.
right. Mhm. Yeah.
You touched me when you talked about apathy, and
Right.
you talked about not ability to be able to have pleasure. And so, I mean, there's Greek words for that we know in therapy, and I'm going to mispronounce them, so I'm not going to say it. But your inability to, and that's a misconception of stoicism. In other words, being apathetic and being indifferent. If anything, you are.
The opposite.
There's Greek myth in the Odyssey is the island of the lotus eaters, and they would they would eat this fruit from the lotus flower that would cause people to forget. And so there's that very powerful idea of uh, you don't go to therapy to forget. You go to therapy to remember and to reframe and to change.
Ah, terrifying. but it
Yeah.
shouldn't be. It's
Yeah.
relieving and freeing, right?
Right.
Yeah, to finish that up, another big piece that I really want to make sure before we're running out of time, you don't want to enter into a process of Stoic philosophy thinking that that is going to help you to be able to be alone better with yourself
Yeah.
and deal with what you're struggling with in a pain point. Instead, it really very much is about, needing to reach out and
Uh-huh.
using that reach out for being grounded.
Uh-huh.
It makes me nervous that people are going to kind of stop a therapy experience and go into what they think is going to be teaching them how to be non-emotional and controlled,
Uh-huh.
grounded, and
Right.
that's dangerous.
Yes. It is dangerous.
And
Yeah.
that is not what Stoicism is advocating. Is that
Right.
correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay.
Full
So to frame us
engagement.
up, oh, go ahead.
Now I was just saying full engagement. Yeah.
Yeah. To begin wrapping us in to wrap up a little bit, there's a balance that we're trying to get here. You can frame Stoicism as a flexible framework, not a rigid doctrine. And I like that you said that, John. You're a Christian, you could do this. If you're a Muslim, you can have Stoic philosophies and
Uh-huh.
incorporate them into your religious belief, right?
Right.
I think I heard you say that. And
Right. You
and
sure
and
can.
moderation. This is
Uh-huh.
not meant to like run your life. And
Uh-huh.
like I said, it makes me nervous that people would stop, services or discontinue medications carry. I don't need those
Uh-huh.
medications anymore. I'm going to learn how to be, you know,
Hmm.
totally grounded without it. Like they're not. I don't think a Stoic would advocate for that.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah. Stoic would,
Take it without.
I think self-discipline, that's a
What's
virtue.
that? Yeah.
Yeah. There's a list in scripture, and this is where Stoicism, some of the scriptures that Paul says, and he has a list of virtues. You know what those virtues are? That's from Stoicism.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Paul took them and engaged them and put them into scripture. St. Paul did, so
Okay.
that these are truths. And so we have wisdom, which is to me the ability, and it's human wisdom, but it's wisdom that I think it's inspired. I think wisdom that in the the viewpoint of the ancient Greek philosophers, uh, they're in the highest level of the first level of hell, which is limbo. Well, not limbo, but it's it it it, it it's the limits of human knowledge. And so they're not in heaven, but they are very wise and understanding, and uh, they have a life of meaning and purpose. So anyway, I got off on a little tangent, but
That never happens, John, does it? No, I'm listening. I've learned a lot.
yeah,
Honestly,
yeah,
your teaching points are. I mean, I'm incorporating it honestly as we're speaking
uh-huh,
into what I do. The last thing that I want to add in sort of striking the right balance is, that we're really searching for an awareness of
uh-huh,
the emotions that
uh-huh,
you're managing and
yeah,
understanding what's present, not suppressing what is present, whether that's your anxiety biological
uh-huh,
condition with clinical traits, or mania with bipolar, or just trauma and what trauma thinking does. We're really looking at understanding and engaging these things, not suppressing and avoiding them.
right.
Go ahead. Yeah, John.
No, I was just thinking that if you're somebody for mindfulness, because um, uh, idea of using those techniques with people that even might have a thought disorder, schizophrenia, some
Yeah.
sort of schizophrenic, is that if they're into the acceptance that they actually have an issue, and they also with this, and also with mood disorders, that they might be able to embrace a stoic philosophy to help them process through what they're undergoing internally, and, and and see its consequences, as how they might be able to go on and continue to live with purpose and meaning.
So I learned a lot more, Carrie, about what Stoicism is not. Are you picking up on a lot of the same things I am?
Yes, well, both. I've learned a lot about all of it. So
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
what it is
yeah.
and what it isn't. A lot more than what
Seriously, it's. I think it's a lot of the things that we do all the time, and probably are not as aware.
Yeah. We're all Stoics.
We are in many ways. I mean, it has embedded itself into a lot of the different theory bases we operate from. So we're going to do the shrink wrap up. That's the way we end the show, Carrie. If you remember from when you were on with us. So what we do is we just kind of wrap up the takeaway points, and we have a friendly competition and see how many through the year you might win filling in with us. So we won't bust your chops if you only win like one or twice a year. But I think you and I are going to have a challenge on this one. Uh, Maybe I'm gonna let you go first
I
because
think
I
John's
need
got
to think. I guess. What did you say?
well, I said I think John's got this one in the bag, but
No, no,
I'm
no,
willing to
no,
bet. I'm
no, no,
willing to
no,
bet.
no.
but I
Let's
will
see.
just
Let's see how we do though. So Neil, I don't have to pass a microphone to you. You're with us. You can pop on and give us the judgment. Right there, he
100%.
is, the man behind the curtain. We're virtual today. So Carrie, I'll go first, I guess, and try the wrap up. I'm going to do is, look, I hope you've learned a little bit, like I have today, on what this is not, and what this is, because as I said, I got the idea from this because I feel like people are drawn to something that they think this is and it's not. And so if you're drawn towards shutting down, if you're drawn towards avoiding things, if you're drawn towards being stoic and not being emotional, that's not what stoicism is about. And so be careful about those traits. If you get in because of those traits, then great, you're going to learn about a whole lot more than what you ever bargained for. So either way, I think you're going to be okay. Carrie, that's about the best I got. What you got for the shrink wrap up?
well, I think that we definitely learned a lot today, and I want to kind of just wrap up with the virtues of it. I know that we covered the both sides of it, what it's not and what it is, but the courage and the wisdom and the temperance and moderation and justice, those are all values that I wish more people lived by. And
Yeah.
those are all things that would definitely help our culture and our way of life. And so I think that this is something that people should look into, learn more about, like we did today. Like I learned a lot, and I appreciate being here.
You might get the dub. I'm not going to lie.
I
That was
think
not
you
bad.
might. Yeah.
What you got,
So,
John?
I just like to sum up and it's a little bit here is that I think Stoicism is the spiritual father or mother of modern psychotherapy theory, particularly those dealing with cognitive behavioral, dialectical behavioral, REBT, or rational emotive behavioral therapy. It is basically a lifestyle and a life philosophy, and it informs you and gives you the tools that actually are more resilient than just, okay, I'm doing CBT or REBT. I'm living it out in my life completely.
Love that. Okay. Where you at, Neil?
I would have to say I think John gave the best recap, but of course he was kind of the expert in this field. I think Harry's was a close second, but I think John definitely
Thank
won this one.
you.
We're not going to say who's last, Carrie. Don't be ragging that in.
No, no, no. This has been very engaging to me,
Yeah,
challenging.
I know. I love it. I do. I
So,
appreciate John. I,
uh,
I guys, I went to John before I did this episode content, and I was like, look, I'm going to lean on you with this one, man, because I don't have a lot here, and so I like you, Carrie, learned a lot with it. I appreciate you, John,
I
with
appreciate you
with
guys.
leading it.
Yeah.
And Carrie, so much cool. Thank you for stepping in for us. Maybe we'll see
You're
you
going to
again
do it
here after
again.
a little while. What is the email that they get to you in the Gaston County, Charlotte area again for prescribing, to find a medication prescriber who is a nurse practitioner who actually speaks to you in prescribing rather than 5-minute med checks?
Yeah,
What's
more
the
than 5
email
minutes,
address
I
again?
promise. But you can email me anytime at carriehillmp@roadtrip2recovery.com.
All right, thank you. And we'll make sure we get that on the show notes. Guys, I think that's it. Closing comments, thoughts?
No, God bless. Have a
All right,
great
listen.
4th of July,
Yeah, I
Independence
was going
Day.
to say, listen, have a very safe holiday. I guess the show will be published on Tuesday after the holiday, but hopefully you had, or if you've listened to this live, have a safe, fun, but safe holiday season on the weekend.
Take
Take
care.
care. We'll see you
Blessings.
next week.
All right. Bye-bye.